Welcome to Alleghany Memories. I am Suzanne Mellow-Irwin, and on behalf of the Alleghany Historical Genealogical Society, it is my pleasure to welcome you inside to the Historical Museum located on Main Street in Sparta, North Carolina, and to episodes of interviews with older folks in our area. Each episode is an oral history featuring personal remembrances about life during the Great Depression, the war years, and other life-defining events that will be of interest to you, and learn what sculptured the lives of those who participate in these interviews. Now, during these interviews, we will encounter ideas, goals, and the deep faith that defined a way of life which is our common heritage. There are no scripts. The people who share remembrances can choose their interviewer and be comfortable in telling their stories in their own words. The interview can also be conducted in a place of their choosing, perhaps in the comfort of their own home. On behalf of the Alleghany Historical Genealogical Society, we encourage your participation, and if you know of relatives or friends who have special remembrances, we welcome you to contact the Society and join us in this very enriching project.
Well, welcome to Alleghany Memories. I'm Lucy Roe, and we're here today. We're going to talk with Minnie Mellow-Irwin and Charity Gambill-Gwyn.
Gwyn.
Right, I'll get that name right someday. So, thank you for joining us, and now on with the show.
Okay, I'm Charity Gambill-Gwyn. My maiden name, I was a Carter. Born and raised here in Alleghany County, and fortunate to have been here. I'll be celebrating my 73rd birthday this year, and I'm just tickled to be here with one of my long-time friends and family member. That's the way we consider Minnie Lou's family. Edwards we go back a long ways, and I'm sure time y'all get through with us, you all know a whole lot more than you know right now, because Miss Irwin or Minnie Lou, I'm going to be informal. She has a wealth of knowledge about my upbringing, where I was born and where I was raised.
Okay, Charity was born right above where I lived, and she was living with her grandpa, who had been a slave. My grandfather, Morg Edwards, bought him for $13 at a place near Shiloh. And he was always very good at Grandpa's. He worked a bit. Grandpa was as square as they could be. Everything had to be clean. He would have them to sweep the granary. The post holes had to all be the same height. And Charity was born above me, and we grew up together. Her mother was also a very good friend, and she had been living with Charlie and Kate Edwards. Her daddy and mother died. Was that right?
They died. She went to live with them to help take care of them as they was getting older, and her mother and father had died, and there were like 8 or 10 of those kids, and they just sort of separated them, going to homes where people would raise them, could take
Could
them
make
in and
use of
yeah,
them.
make use of them. And I would say she was very blessed to be brought up in the home where my father's grandfather, Charlie, was my great-grandpa. And but my dad was there too, and he and my mother got together and was married at, I think Mama was like 22 and Daddy was 24 when they got married. And
Now, what part of the county did you live in then? Was it near Sparta or Twin Oaks or Piney Creek?
it was the Vox community, known as the Vox community.
That's right.
Yeah, close to the Virginia line, Baywood. But we was born and lived there until the home where I was born and raised was given to my great-grandpa Charlie, by his slave owner, Mr. Morg. And I always heard back in the day that Grandpa Charlie was considered one of the good slaves, and that Mr. Morg was very good to him. And the home where we was born and raised in, Mr. Morg left it to my great-grandpa. And when my great-grandpa died, because Mama and Daddy had stayed there and took care of him and my great-grandma Kate, he gave the home place to Daddy. We lived there until, I think it was 49 or 50 when our first house burned down. I was 8 or 9 years old. And from there we just sort of had to live in rental property. But Minnie Lou's daddy, who was like a brother to my dad, made sure that we had a home to live in. Wherever we went, he would tell the people, you know, if Lige comes up payment short and cannot pay his rent, don't put him out. I'll take care of it. And Mr. Dillon was just like that, and there was a relationship between those families that our family and the Edwards family, that you don't see this day and time.
No.
It's true. And we was just like...
They were very devoted.
Yeah, and we grew up with Minnie Lou's sister. Minnie Lou was the older one. I guess I don't know when she got married and left home, but Betty and Dorothy and Charles and John Wayne, and we used to wait on the school bus together. And Mr. Dillon, as we called him, he had built down on the road a little shelter for us to wait for we had to ride the mail cart to our school, and the bus would pick up Charles and Betty and Dorothy and John Wayne, and we would sit there until our ride come that took us to school, because we rode the mail car. Paul Krause was carrying the mail from down there, and the county paid him, I don't know how much, probably not much, but to take us to school of a morning. But in the afternoon, they had a school bus. We always called it the bread truck. It would take us home in the afternoons. But we had, while we were living in that area, I mean, Daddy worked sort of a tenant farmer, but we didn't want for nothing, let's put it that way, because of the Edwards family. And like I said, we grew up thinking we were, you know, this is our family, because that's what
Yes, it was.
We got along. We lived there. Of course, Grandpa Charlie took on the Edwards name because that was, I think, traditional back in the day, that the slaves took on their owner's name. But again, Big Charlie, as he was known, apparently, I vaguely remember him because I was like 4 years old, but we had a rocking chair in front of the old wood stove or the fireplace, and Grandpa Charlie, great-grandpa Charlie, would sit and rock me. And I don't remember Grandma Kate that well, other than the fact she had a cherry tree behind the house that nobody was to pick cherries out of her tree. Mama offered to help her, but she just flatly told Mama, no, you don't get in my tree. And unfortunately, Grandma Kate crawled up in the tree. There were big roots running from the tree, and it ended up tragically because she fell out of the tree, and that's what killed her.
Yeah.
Her head hit on a root. But I guess if you would say she was probably the mean one out of the family, because she did not have a good reputation, because when her son's baby died, her son's name was James, and when they had the funeral, they had a horse and buggy, had to pull them, and Grandma Kate made this child's mother walk, and she rode in the horse and buggy with her son James. So that made me not think a whole lot of Grandma Kate, of course, but that was sort of some of the early things that I can remember that Mama could tell us all about that. And there was a cemetery, and I'll let Miss Minnie tell you about the cemetery where the black slaves at that time were being buried. The ones that, especially down there, I don't know how many. I know Great-Grandpa Charlie and his siblings and several were buried there.
Yes, they were. Way up on a hill, the awfulest place to get to. But Charlie, my brother, who sold the land, moved all of the graves that they could find. Some of them, they don't know where they are, I guess.
And they moved them to Crab Creek
Yeah,
Church. Yeah,
moved them someday.
And it was such a blessing. Of course, we, the Edwards side, my dad's side of the family, they all lived in Virginia, and they did not keep that cemetery up. Like Minnie Lewis said, it was way up on this hill. The only way you could get to it was either walk or ride a horse to get up to it. And of course, a horse and buggy would take, when someone died, would take them to the graveyard there and bury them. But back then, we didn't have people out with diggers to backhoes to dig graves. You dug graves by hand.
Was the cemetery in Virginia?
No. It's down 18, like you turn on the Box Road and go up there. It was right on top of the hill.
Well, what was the road like, say, from Sparta down your way? Was it?
It was gravel road up until when, Minnie Lou? Can you remember when?
I can't remember when we got it.
But it was a gravel road. You didn't run into Hardtop until you passed that church down there where the Gentrys lived, who was, the old big Gentry house there.
Yeah.
Now, it was the road that was not paved until you got down,
Was it Zion Church?
Zion Church.
Zion Church.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be where it is.
And I don't remember what year it was paved all the way through, but it was just a gravel road. I know we lived off of a gravel road, and we used to have to walk to catch our ride to go to school. It's a little over a mile, about a mile.
Yeah, a mile and a half.
Yeah. And a lot of times we'd cut through the fields. We'd go through Mr. Dillon's cornfields and everything else. He'd tell us, now don't be stepping on the corn. That's a shortcut for you, and don't ride my fences.
Yeah.
A lot of times especially if I had a wire fence up.
Yeah.
Well, where did you go to school?
I went to school. They had a little school. First of all, it was at Macedonia Church, and that was my first couple of years, I guess. And then they built Cherry Lane School, and that's where I went to elementary school through the 8th grade. Unfortunately, we had to be bused if we was going to high school to North Wilkesboro. And I went to high school there for 2 years, and I just decided that it was too long a ride. I was tired of going, and we'd get over there tired, and I done very well in school. I was pretty smart, but I just didn't like the idea that we was having to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and ride that distance, and so I dropped out of school and got married. I finished 10th grade, dropped out of school and got married, and started having children and at an early age. And my first husband, we were divorced, separated, and later divorced, so I ended up raising 4 kids with the help of my mother and the community. I'll just put it that way, because people was so good to us, to their family, and I worked in private homes, hoed corn for 10 cents an hour, and my first private home that I worked in happened to be for the doctor's wife that delivered me, Dr. Bert Choate. I worked for her, and she paid me $3 a day. And finally, Roy Lee Krause hired us to hoe corn, and he paid us 50 cents an hour. So we'd work 8 hours, and that was, $4. That's big money. That was big money back in the day. And I tell you, it was big money.
Where did you go to school, Minnie Lou?
Well, I stayed with my grandfather and went to school at Hooker until Clifton got old enough to go with me. See, we had to walk 4 miles to get to the box. We had to go to the box. That's a long way.
Yes, yes.
And we all had our struggles, but it seemed like it was hard. But we look back over those we call them the good old days.
Yeah,
now.
we do.
We were much more appreciative of what we had, even though it was little. We didn't have to. We never went hungry. We didn't really want for anything. We didn't have none, but we didn't know any better.
Everybody else is the same way.
And if our neighbors ate, if Mr. Dillon, he killed hogs or killed a beef, that's the only time we ever had beef. We did raise our own hogs. But as long as they ate, we ate. That's just the way it was. And we couldn't had a better life growing up as kids, and like I say, we didn't have anything. We didn't have, of course, the only running water we had was when we waited late of the evening to go to the spring, and Daddy'd come in and we'd run with a bucket to the spring and run back. That's what I told my kids, and they thought that was really funny. But
well, what did you do for fun to have?
Lord,
a good old time.
We used to shoot marbles. We played jacks.
That's right.
We played ball. On Sunday, we would go to our neighbor, O.C. Caudle, had some flat land, and we would gather there with, of course, we were the only black family in that community. We would gather there on Sunday and play ball all day, and we would make our balls out of old socks, and sometimes in order to get them to go a long ways, we'd put a little rock in the middle of socks and wrap them and wrap them and wrap them. And we would get bats, use a board. And a lot of them times, you hit them old sock balls and they come loose, and they'd be going through the air with the tail of the sock just sailing. And then we got to the place where I think it was Harold Edwards, Millie's brother, bought us some rubber balls from somewhere, and tennis balls were what we always wanted because they would go farther. But we did that. We jump rope. We had made a playhouse, me and some of my friends, neighbors. We had made a playhouse in the wood pine grove over close to Lena and Dean Andrews. And we had made this nice playhouse. We snuck the brooms out of the house and swept the pine needles up. We had enough dishes over there until my mama started asking, where's this and where's that? And my sister would look at me and I'd look at her. And it was time for the moment of truth. You either told truth or you was going to get a lashing. But, and we used to shoot marbles, play hopscotch,
Play baseball. And in the wintertime, Daddy made us a sled that probably weighed 100 pounds. But it was an old wood sled, but he made it for us. And if it snowed, we'd make a snowman and just sort of have a community sleigh riding time together.
Now, Minnie Lou, did you join in this, or was this?
Well, some of it I guess I did. I don't know.
Yeah, Minnie Lou was, like I say, she was, I don't know when she left home, but I know Dorothy and Betty, of course, and Charles and John Wayne. Dorothy and Betty didn't play as much as we did, but John Wayne and Charles would always come, and then we had Dorman and Don Wooten, some of the Fenders, David Fender and that, O.C. Caudle's boys.
You had a big group.
Yeah, we'd just gather and play ball. Like I said, we'd play ball all day long. Oh yeah, we would go skinny dipping, swimming.
Yeah.
Mama, we'd pond that water up, and we'd get down there and swim. We had a big water hole.
Yeah, we did.
All we do is splashed around in the water. And another thing we did, we had a creek running down between Miss Anders, O.C. Caudle's, and joined our property. And we would go to that creek. They told us in crawfish there was pearls.
Yeah.
Boy, we squeezed more than one crawfish and got pinched by them and stuff to find that pearl. I don't know what I was going to do with it. And we would go seining. We fix seines and catch minnows to go fishing with. And we would go down to Little River, like on a Monday was wash day. Well, on Tuesdays, Miss Lena Andrews, who was another neighbor of ours, her and Mama would get her grandkids and us all together. We'd haul off to the river. We'd pack our lunch. We had milk and bread, and that was basically what we'd take. We'd cut our fishing poles out of the woods, some kind of that was flexible wood, and we had string. I don't know where they got the string from. And then they'd try, as a sinker, they'd tie a little rock on the hose line of the, and we would fish all day.
What did you use for a hook?
It was hooks. They had hooks. I don't know where. Mr. John Andrews, Lena's husband, he always had the hooks for us.
We had to bend straight pins.
But you did? Well, we could buy the hooks, or that's from, we had a store. Jim Maines had a store, and John McLean had a store that was close to us. And we would walk over there, and they would have hooks on a little card. There's probably a nickel to get enough hooks. But those were some of the things. Oh Lord, the snuff dipping. Now my husband, he's going to spill a lot of things I wouldn't have told. One of the times that I was babysitting for Nichols' family, and Ann Nichols. They called her Little Ann, and I was Big Ann because my name's Charity Ann. And she and I decided we was dipping snuff, and her mama dipped snuff. Well, Ann told me, she said, if you'll get Mama's attention, you know, while you're talking, I'll get us some snuff. And we had a pond down off 18, down below their house, and we went. She got the snuff, and we took off, and we'd see them dip a stick in it and chew it. But instead, then we saw them put it in their lip, so that's what we did that day. Put it in our lip. We got in that swimming hole, and when Ann jumped in, I jumped in right behind her. Well, I couldn't swim. I went to the bottom, and here I am twice her size, and I don't know how she got me out of there. But that stopped me from dipping snuff from that day, and I was probably 13 or 14-year-old. But no more snuff. That
ended it, huh?
I got strangled. I could have died. And of course, like I said, I couldn't swim no way. But I thought because she jumped in, I could do what she could do, and I jumped.
Well, Minnie, did you ever dip snuff?
No. My grandmother dipped snuff, but she sicked me out of it. So I never did drink any, eat any, or dip any.
One of our favorite things to do was, like I said, Dad was a tenant farmer, and back then we had to hoe the corn. And Mr. Dillon, he had this huge cornfields, because that's what they used, even ground corn to make our cornmeal, and back then, and they would thrash wheat, and but we hoed corn. It would be me and Charlotte, my sister, and Charles and John Wayne, and several others in the neighborhood, even Kyle Edwards, who was Mr. Dillon's brother. Were they brothers?
Half brothers.
Half brothers. We sort of worked together, and we would hoe corn, and Mr. Dillon told whoever got to the end of the row first, you know, he's going to give them an extra nickel or something. And so me and Charles would take off just a hoe, and I tell you, we'd get through them rows, and every once in a while we was cutting some corn off, and we'd take time to stick it back in the ground, and in a few days Mr. Dillon would be walking by out in the cornfield, and he said, "Now you youngins," he sort of sucked through his teeth there, "and now you're doing a good job hoeing that corn, but you're cutting a lot of it off too. So that's the reason you're getting through your rows so fast." But then at lunchtime, he would let us ride the horses to the barn, and there'd be sometimes 2 or 3 of us get on the same horse and go to the barn, because they'd take the horses in and water them and feed them, while we had go to Miss Lily, Dillon's wife. She would always have dinner for all of us. And I tell you, when I say dinner, it's what we call lunch now. We had dinner. I mean, you had beans, you had some kind of meat, you had cornbread, everything you can think of. I mean, good country cooking. But those were some of my fondest memories of growing up down in the Vox community and the Edwards family. And like Minnie Lou sitting here, she was so good to my mother. And Mama loved her as a sister. And when Doug and I got married here only 7 years ago, Minnie Lou came, and of course my mom had died in May, and I got married in September, and we had Minnie Lou to sit in with the family as part of the family, because that's the way we felt. You know, she is part of our family.
Well, I am.
Yeah, we are.
No question.
Yes, sir. So we've had, like I say, some people would say those were hard times, But I think now we're going through some hard times. But we've come a long ways, and I just feel so blessed. And like I said earlier, I dropped out of high school and had no desire to go back. I felt like I had to work because it was a struggle. There were 7 of us kids. So me and my oldest sister, Charlotte, we both dropped out of high school. I got married and had kids, and after 4 years of marriage, 5 years of marriage, was separated, divorced, and I had these 4 kids to raise, me and my mother and the community. And but I feel like to not have had high school education, the things that I've been able to do here in the county makes me proud to have just been in Alleghany County, because I don't think I could have done it anywhere else.
Well, Charity, you have worked with education quite a bit in your adult life. Now, even though you just went to the 10th grade,
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that.
Okay. Back some years ago, John Woodruff, who was superintendent of public schools here, Alleghany County Schools, he asked me to run for the Board of Education. And I said, there ain't no way I can run for the Board of Education. I said, John, I don't even have a high school education. He said, Charity, but you can do it. He said, he had been around me enough to know that I was eager to learn things and to do things, and he knew the appreciation I had for education and how I supported the school system with my kids being in school and the things. So I decided to go ahead and run. And my first time that I run for the Board of Education, a lot of people said, well, I was crazy. Said there's less than 1% black, excuse me, black population here, and there's no way you can get elected in this county. Well, needless to say, I ran and led the ticket the first term. The second term, I didn't do quite so well. I run these 4-year terms, but I ended up serving 16 years on the Board of Education. And one of the things that really was a driver was behind me being so committed was the fact that opportunities had opened up for blacks here in the county and education as a whole, because I don't think that whether I'd had a high school education or not, that I could have been any more committed to do what I did and loved doing it. And my 16-year tenure on the board, I served several of those years as the chairman of the Board of Education. After my 16 years with the board, I decided, well, I'm ready to get out of politics, and then let somebody talk me into running for county commissioner. And I said, there's never been a minority on that board. There's never been a woman served on that board. But my kids was ready for me to get out of it, and I said, well, I'll just run. I won't go down without a fight. So I got elected to the Board of County Commissioners, served 4 years. And you talk about a humbling experience. Serving on both sides of the table. I can remember as being on the Board of Education and going to commissioners' meetings with a handout, I'm fighting for what we needed for the school system and for our kids. And then when I was sitting on the other side of the table, I realized where the money was having to come from and just how tight it was to be able to support all the agencies in the county, and how the money had to be divided. But to me, on both sides of the table, I still thought education should be number one no matter what. And that's what I fought for my 20 years in county government, 16 with the Board of Education and 4 with county commissioners. And like I say, it was a humbling experience, a learning experience. And I still, since I've retired, I'm not as involved in things. I still I'm still on Blue Ridge Electric's Board of Directors. And the reason that I'm on Blue Ridge Electric's board stemmed from Minnie Lou's dad, Dylan Edwards. He served on Blue Ridge Electric's board for a number of years, and his health, because of his health, he stepped down. Well, apparently back then, which was not in the 70s, he had told them that he would like to see another representative from the county, and he thought it was time for him to look at getting a minority, a woman or a minority. So either way, it would have been a minority, because they'd never had a woman, and they'd certainly never had an African American. And but had it not been for him, I don't know if the ice had been broken later on or what would have happened. But anyway, back in 1976, I was elected to Blue Ridge Electric's board, and I'm currently into my 37th year on that board. So, but again,
That's a long time.
a long time, and certainly a great learning experience. And I'm really a determined person. I've served in, done a lot of things, certainly here in the county, and I'm not one to want to toot my own horn, but when I think of what could I have done had I had an education, had a diploma. I worked at a pipe factory for 33 years and started out in the packing department. And when I retired, I had moved up to the environmental health and safety coordinator for the company. And I'd like to think that I'd really made a great contribution to that part of the company as far as promoting safety and health and working on the environmental issues. I wrote a lot of programs, and certainly felt like if a person come in to work there, I wanted them to go home the way they safe and without harm, because a lot of the machinery they had to work with, certainly you had to be safety conscious or you could have gotten some serious injuries.
Yeah, well, Minnie Lou, you had something to do with education.
Lord.
Not much.
Let's put it like this, I had 4 children and all 4 of them went to her. And
Yeah, they did.
Well, it's my sister Peggy, because Minnie Lou was instrumental in Peggy going to Berea College, my youngest sister. Now I'll let her talk about that.
Well, all I know is I just told Peggy, you have to go. And you go to Berea, and she did. She graduated.
Yes, she
did very well.
Yes, she did. And
you can tell the rest of it.
Well, Peggy, like I say, my dad died, and Peggy was my youngest sister, and because Miss Irwin had helped her in high school and encouraged her to go on to college, because Peggy was very smart. And,
yes, she is.
She got the Goodman and Hurt Scholarship through Blue Ridge Electric that year, and she finished 4 years at Berea, and she was foreign language. That was her major, and but when she graduated from Berea, she went into the military, and she retired from the military with 20 years of service at a very high rank. And she's now, when she retired from the military, she was too young to actually retire from not doing anything. So her and her husband both was military, and they moved to Columbia, Maryland, worked for the government, Washington for a number of years, and she just recently retired, and they built a nice home in Kernersville, so she's a little closer home.
Well, good.
We've had some good students come from Alleghany County.
Yes, we have.
And many thanks to Minnie Lou.
I don't
Yes,
know
sirree.
about that.
I'll tell you a little story about Minnie Lou. And one of my daughters came home, Robin came home, and she said, "Mama," said, "Miss Irwin told us that them television wasn't no television, it's television. So that's caused more damage to education than anything in the world. Said you need to cut them squawk boxes off," I think she said. "Squawk boxes off and get with that homework." But it was funny. But I know Miss Irwin, I know she has been instrumental, and she's touched a lot of lives here in Alleghany County, especially with education. And
Well, Ms. Irwin, if you sent Charity's sister to Berea, how many kids did you counsel to go on to college?
Oh, a lot of them, and a lot of them went to Berea. There was one boy, Jimmy Brenniger, very smart boy, came from nothing, Euless and I took him up there, and they took him in the school. He came back and got his two brothers, and one of them is still in Berea, and the other one is nearby, and I hear from him every week. They said, they didn't have a chance. But the fact that the oldest one got in, then he came back and got the other two.
But Berea was a place that folks that didn't have anything could go and
That's
work
right.
their way through college.
They worked their way
worked.
through. They had a farm that they could work at. I know one of them milked and the other one fed chickens.
well, I know Peggy. They had an outdoor drama, the Wilderness Road, and she was in that, and she worked. I think it was in the school library, but they had, like Miss Irwin has said here, that they worked. They had to work. And,
Yes,
and,
everybody worked.
we would go up there every summer because Peggy was would stay there because of the outdoor drama, and she was one of the characters in the drama. So it was.
Well, how many years did you teach school?
I don't know.
You don't know.
How can I tell? Well, I taught for over 40, but I retired in 1985, and I hadn't been retired long. And Burgess's wife broke her leg, and the principal, who was he?
Jim Green. Was it Jim Green?
No, it's for Jim. Well, yeah, I guess it was. Asked me to come back to teach, so how can I tell how many years I taught?
You hadn't been out because you done substitute and everything else.
Yeah,
After you
yeah,
retired, yeah.
Tutoring.
Yeah, tutoring, this, that, and the other.
And she's got a scholarship now in her name, and
Yeah.
still gives money, and I was blessed, and I think Miss Irwin or Minnie Luce here was instrumental in that. In 1994, I received the Nancy Susan Reynolds Award, and was given like a the Education Foundation had nominated me, and I won that year for community service, and it was $25,000 that I got for being a winner, and I had to give $20,000 of that to some organization here in the county, and I chose the education. So I gave $20,000 to the Education Foundation, and I got $5,000. And then within 6 months, the Education Foundation had invited me to a meeting to tell me that they wanted that $20,000 to go into a scholarship fund named for me. So ever since then, I've been given scholarship in my name. And like I said, Miss Irwin, Minnie Lou sitting here, was instrumental in getting that done too. Yeah, she contributed to a lot of the information that they had to gather about me and my humble beginnings. Oh, I was with the rescue squad for 30 years, so I know I don't look that old. So I was with the rescue squad for 30 years, and that's always been, I think that's where got me a lot of name recognition, because and that's because a lot of people that voted for me when I ran for the Board of Education said, "Oh, I know you. We went door to door soliciting funds," and so a lot of people was familiar with me that way, and associated me with the rescue squad and knowed how committed I was and devoted to that. But I had a mother who supported me all the way, and Miss Irwin can tell you that.
Oh, yes.
Mama worked hard to raise 7 kids. And my daddy was a good man, a hard-working man, but he lacked his toddy as a body. Yeah, he was a bootlegger back in the day, and one of the funniest things that happened with he kept his booze up in the house, and I decided one day Mama had a bunch of ducks, and she had gone down to Mr. Dillon's to iron for Miss Lily. So I decided we'd run out of things to do, and it's awful hot. I told my sister, I said, get one of Mama's snuff glasses, and I'm going to go up here and get some of Daddy's liquor, and we're going to make them ducks drink it. Lord have mercy. Charlotte grabbed the ducks, and I took a spoon, and we made them ducks drink that liquor. And they'd go quack, 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 and just flop down. And it scared me to death. Here all 4 or 5, I think it was, of them. I said, Mama's going to kill us. Mama came home, her ducks was laying at the port down at the foot of the steps. She said, Lord have mercy, this heat's done killed my ducks. Everyone else dead. I know they're dead. And she said that heat just got to them. She said they should have had sense enough to get down to the creek, to the water. She didn't know until we was grown that I gave them ducks that liquor.
Sober up.
They sobered up. But she thought it was the heat, because she made us run to the spring, and she'd get water and pour it on them and stuff. But it was funny. Huh?
Idle hands.
Oh, yes. It's amazing things we did for entertainment.
Yeah.
What kind of changes have y'all seen in this area since you were little?
Lord have mercy.
Mercy.
I know it's
Well, it's different.
There was a time I knew everybody in the county. We do have a lot of new people in this county.
Yes, we do.
And some, of course, we have Roaring Gap, and used to be old Roaring Gap's been there for as long as I can remember, but High Meadows and Old Bow and some of these places, they are new, and they have a lot of summer residents. But there's several, I know it, High Meadows and Old Bow that's year round. And there's been a lot of good things, but we've lost a lot of things. You know,
Yeah, we have.
The downtown atmosphere, because we used to have a Belks, believe it or not. And I know Miss Adeline Evans died here, and I was telling one of her daughters this week that Generette's was one of our fanciest stores, and
Yeah.
Place to shop.
the shaped place to shop, and they had Jonathan Logan. That was a big name for us, and I know I bought a lot of things from there, and the drugstores. Tom Burgess, who was took over the drugstore from his father. His father was.
That's right.
And then Tom, and
Well, folks talk about then Bonnie. We interviewed Bonnie Vaughn this morning, and she was talking about how on weekends, on Saturdays, everybody would come to town and
theater.
visiting and going to the matinee.
Yeah, matinee.
Matinee.
That's right. We sure did, and we, as being black, we had to sit up in the balcony. We didn't realize till we was allowed to go downstairs. We had the best seats in the building, sitting in the balcony. We was we'd go in there. That was, of course, we had a drive-in theater over at Twin Oaks.
Yeah,
There's
that was a big attraction.
and of course back in the day, we had a lot of dairy farming.
Yes,
County,
we
but
did.
Those things have just got very few farms, especially dairy farming here in the county.
I don't guess there's over one or two.
I'd say there's not.
The Hamptons and I think there's one down about Ennis.
It's still, yeah,
That's all I know about.
yeah.
And your food, well, everybody grew there, what they ate.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, if you didn't grow it, you did it out.
Yeah, that's the truth. That's the only thing that we really had to go to the store and buy was, your salt and pepper and your cornmeal and
flour.
What'd you have in your garden? You say you killed your own. You had your own hogs.
Yeah. Well, you raised everything. We raised corn and beans and peas and potatoes and tomatoes and lettuce and greens. We picked blackberries. We picked dewberries. We had kern bushes. Now, them kerns, Mom made some pretty good kern jelly, but you talk about them things was sort of bitter or not sweet. But we raised just about everything that we ate.
And then you'd pick berries and make jelly and can the berries and make pies during the winter.
And I had wild grapes. Those fox grapes, they made the best juice.
Yes, they did.
Everybody had apples and pears.
Oh, yeah, apples, pears, cherries.
Yeah.
Getting hungry.
But we had all that. And if we didn't have the neighbors, whatever the neighbors had. And I keep referring to the Edwards family as our family. That's the only family we knew. And actually, we was the only black family in that community, in the Box community.
Yeah.
And a lot of people think it's strange when I tell them this, but the first time we got together with a large crowd of other blacks. It scared us. We didn't know where all these people come from, and we thought we was the only ones. And we was crying, and it was happened to be at my mother's brother's funeral, and somebody was talking about how hard us kids was taking it. We wasn't crying about Uncle Edgar's. We was crying because somebody took the baby from Mama, and we thought they was taking Jackie, my brother, away from Mama, and we was crying over that because there's 4 of us just holding on to Mama's dress tail. But we grew up in that, and I tell you, we didn't see color. We played with, I know the Fenders, David Fender and I often talk about how we grew up picking up rocks. I picked up many of a rock off of the land for them to plant corn and stuff. We picked up rocks, we stacked hay, we done built fences, you name it, we did it.
Oh, yeah, you did it.
But again, I guess and it's strange, my whole family, I'm the only one left here, only one that stayed here, actually, because of the job situation. Even when my kids finished high school, all 4 of them, I was able to, with the help of the community and them getting scholarships, all 4 of them attended college. My son, Monroe, only went 2 years to A&T, but he joined the Reserve Marines, and of course he died in '89. But my oldest daughter went to Gilbert College, my second daughter went to Elon College, and my youngest daughter, Robin, went to NC State, and I wanted her to go to Carolina, but she didn't. Nothing Carolina blue. That was exciting to her. She went to State, and she dropped out, I think, after first 2 years or something, but then she went back and just got her degree a couple of years ago, and she's now working with Mecklenburg, hospital in the cancer wards. So I've been blessed with my kids. I told them I didn't have the money, but I said, if you'll go on to college, I'll borrow it. It may take me a lifetime to pay it back, but because of a lack of education, I think a lot of things I was able to do without it, but I wonder now what all I could have done had I had an education.
You've probably been president of the United States.
That's what I was thinking. I'd say you were pretty successful even without it.
Yeah. We had our struggles, but you know, it's when I think we was just saying before y'all come in, it just wasn't a struggle between the African Americans. When you look back on it, we was all in our time gone through some stuff. Even I know this young lady sitting over here on the floor that we was just talking about how she was coming here and the struggles they had trying to get in a free country where the USA is probably. And things are changing. I don't know, sometimes I wonder if it's for the better or not. I don't know. But I think my best years are yet to come. I've had a good life. I can't complain. And with my husband, he thinks I'm crazy. But I told him, I said, well, we make a pretty good pair because he's a little on the crazy side. Yeah.
Well, we sure appreciate y'all letting us come by and pick your brains a little bit.
Well, I've done all the talking. I feel like...
well, I don't have anything to talk about.
This woman has.
She's the backbone.
It never fails. I know last night I had a board meeting, and Johnny Wishon, by the way, said, "You tell Miss Irwin I love her." He said he thinks about. I mean, there's not many young people that don't remember Miss Irwin in school.
Well, my daughter, Julia, was a chemistry major, and it come from Miss Irwin.
Oh, well.
She was a great influence to Julia in high school.
She was a great influence on a lot of
Well, I
kids'
don't know
lives.
what they did not.
Yes, she certainly has been, and I know she still
is.
I tell you, she and I, she keeps telling me, she said, "Charity, well, we're about the only two left that can reminisce about some of our history and some things that, especially when it pertains to our families." And I can just say one thing: thank God for the Edwards family, because I probably wouldn't have been here today had it not been for them.
Your daddy always looked out for you.
Yeah.
It's just the same as our family.
Yeah. And Mr. Dillon Daddy always called him boss, but they were like brothers.
Yeah, they were.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for being here with Alleghany Memories. This is something to look forward to. We need to preserve our oral history.
I hope you have enjoyed this episode as much as I have. Again, it is a pleasure that the Historical Museum and the Genealogical Society of Alleghany has started this project. It will be a remembrance for future generations of Alleghany County. Thank you.